Okay, everyone. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. In the coming hour, we will unveil the results of our research, the U.S. Hydrogen Demand Action Plan. So my name is Tatiana Bruce da Silva. I'm project manager here at EFI and clean hydrogen enthusiast. Just a few housekeeping rules before we start. So first, this event is being recorded and will be available on our website and YouTube channel. And please send your questions in the chat for the Q&A section of this webinar. And those are the two main things that I had to say today. So now I would like to give the virtual floor to EFI's President and CEO and the 13th U.S. Secretary of Energy, Dr. Ernest Moniz. Secretary Moniz, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you, Tatiana, and thank you to all of you who have dialed in for this report and for the special briefing we will have at the beginning of this hour from our friend Ali Zaidi at the White House. Clearly, reaching net zero on the time frame that we all are working for is going to require a tremendous amount of innovation and investment. Of course, always while continuously providing reliable, resilient energy services. And of course, the hydrogen need for that innovation and investment perspective is no different. The hydrogen has taken off really, and to a large extent, the still relatively recent infrastructure law and the IRA, of course, have provided a tremendous foundation for accelerating hydrogen market formation in the United States. And of course, there are a lot of similar activities going on around the world. This is very exciting, given hydrogen's flexibility, its ability to address decarbonization in many sectors. But we also know, and we'll be reporting in terms of our research, that we still got a ways to go. I mean, we can't be complacent. We have a great start. The hubs will be a focus of discussion. They are, we believe, rightly so, a focus of government action in terms of moving things forward. But again, we're going to need strong support and strong innovation to keep going on the supply and the demand sides. I think I'm just going to leave it at that in terms of what we are looking at. Although I should say perhaps that the report today is really the end of a few years, really starting significantly before the infrastructure law was passed, in terms of interviews, workshops, and analysis around this question of accelerated hydrogen market formation. But with that, we are going to start with a welcome to our good friend of some longstanding, Ali Zaidi, who is the White House National Climate Advisor and Assistant to the President. Ali has been a very central player in energy and climate now in various roles for several years. Certainly, I can go back to the Obama administration with Ali's roles at the DOE. I'll just mention, for example, his role with President Obama's, the Obama-Biden National Climate Plan in 2013. He's had a senior role in terms of energy and science at OMB. Let's see the title. He was the New York State Chairman of Climate Policy and Finance, really leading climate policy development in New York State. And as I said, now is National Climate Advisor in the Biden White House. So we've asked Ali, and he has graciously agreed to give us a few minutes of his time to give an overall perspective about hydrogen and the clean energy transition more broadly. So Ali, let me hand it over to you.
Thank you, Secretary Moniz, and thanks to the entire EFI team for, I think, a really important contribution to the dialogue on how we leverage this tool to accelerate decarbonization across the U.S. economy and do it in a way that builds prosperity, builds good-paying union jobs, revitalizes communities that have been left behind, and strengthens our energy security, something that I think is increasingly front of mind, especially as we feel the impacts of Russian aggression in Europe. So look, where we are today is almost an unimaginable level of progress relative to maybe where we would have been, where we would have imagined we'd be even 5 years ago. We are, I think, poised in the United States, not just to get in the race around clean hydrogen, but really to set the United States up to be a leader in driving forward the deployment of clean hydrogen in the service of our climate and energy security goals. For us, I think the way we think about what that means is not only innovation in the generation of the clean hydrogen molecules, right? Not only innovation when it comes to making electrolyzers and figuring out the supply side of the equation, but innovation in terms of the infrastructure that will connect the supply and the demand, innovation on the demand side. How do we use this tool to decarbonize as much of the economy as possible? President Biden's clean hydrogen strategy really focuses itself around using this tool as an accelerant towards reaching our net zero emissions across the economy objective, trying to get there by no later than 2050, and doing it in a way that is reinforcing of something we've seen the president really usher over the last 2 years, which is a renaissance in American manufacturing. And there are a lot of ways to measure that renaissance in American manufacturing. I like the statistic he used at the State of the Union this week: 800,000 new manufacturing jobs here in the U.S. The bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, Bill and Ira, the couple that will save the planet, make investments to go from strength to strength here. We are aiming as part of a national hydrogen strategy that we've developed in partnership with the Department of Energy to leverage Bill and Ira to drive the production of 10 million metric tons of clean hydrogen by 2030. And really at the heart of that are, there's a multitude of policies, but the heart of that are two really big ones. The $8 billion included in Bill to develop regional hydrogen hubs across the country, and I want to get a little bit more into that. And two, a tax suite that I look at as not only the hydrogen production tax credit, which is very novel and very exciting, but also the 48C manufacturing credit, which, thanks to leadership from Senator Manchin and Senator Stabenow, has been revamped and now includes a focus on the manufacturing of technologies that will help us produce these clean fuels. When we look across the administration, and I was talking to Ernie about this, for over a year now, we've been collecting a group of agencies at the deputies level and principals level to talk about all the tools and all the levers we can bring forward to accelerate our ability to harness this technology. To us, that's not just the Department of Energy or the traditional sort of places where conversations around hydrogen are had. That's the Department of Transportation, making sure there's a science-based framework to regulate the technology in a way that's going to facilitate capital formation. It's EPA, making sure that there's strong environmental standards development. It's the Treasury Department, which obviously is managing the tax portfolio here. But it's also agencies like GSA and HUD and the Department of Defense, thinking about how we use this technology and this cleaner source of fuel in the development of cleaner materials that can be used in construction. So we're connecting the dots between this and our goals on Buy Clean. So we've been bringing together all of these agencies, and I think what we're seeing is real progress out in the marketplace. Capital formation, I think, around clean hydrogen in the United States, again, is in a place where I don't think we would have extrapolated 5 or even 3 years ago that we would be able to be here. That's, an example of that is the $4 billion announcement from Air Products and AES to build the largest green hydrogen plant in Texas. That's 1,300 construction jobs. We've seen also, I think, folks on the demand side respond to this as well, thinking through how this can help us develop things like cleaner steel and cleaner aluminum. And again, as we go after the challenge of implementing these pieces of legislation and tapping into this opportunity, we're excited for the contributions like what EFI is putting forward today, but also from all of you on how we very practically scale up with great speed and sense of urgency the potential of this technology. So let me go a little bit into the clean hydrogen strategy that we are pursuing. One of those elements is a research roadmap that is focused on continuing to drive us down the technology cost curve. One of the things that the tax code does is help do some bridging of the gap between the cost of a clean molecule of hydrogen today and what the market is willing to pay for it to facilitate the substitution drive towards clean. We believe that we can get to $1 per kilogram within a decade for clean hydrogen. That's the DOE hydrogen shot goal, and we're focused on doing that again in a technology neutral manner. We want to be laser focused on the life cycle emissions intensity, but we don't want to preclude who's going to help us get there in terms of the fuel mixer generation to get that done. The clean hydrogen production tax credit that is included in IRA and the product of, I think, really good collaboration with Congress, I think reflects that commitment to essentially, technology neutrality when it comes to the production of clean hydrogen. And the full value of the credit, $3 per kilogram of clean hydrogen, is focused again on that life cycle emissions element, and sort of makes sense in an administration that really takes as its North Star getting to decarbonization across the economy without, again, a focus on particular technology types. There are different assessments of how much investment this will catalyze. Some folks have said the PTC could mobilize over $100 billion into the marketplace. I'm super bullish, so I always think the estimates are underestimating the excitement, enthusiasm. But what's important to me, and I think this I just get marching orders from the boss, for I think is something all of us are focused on, is that to get the full value of this tax credit, folks are going to be need to pay prevailing wages across this emerging sector, and I think that's going to be a really important part of how we build this out. This has to be a high road industry as we grow it. Now to the hubs. DOE has taken the first few steps in the direction here. It's $8 billion. They've signaled that will build up to 10 regional hubs across the country. The first stage of this process, the concept paper stage, received 79 submissions of coalitions of companies and stakeholders across the full hydrogen value chain in every region of the country. And the applications together, and this goes to my point of being very bullish about what we're able to catalyze in terms of private capital, just the hubs applications together propose an aggregate of $157 billion of private capital investment alongside the federal funds. And again, in the spirit of let's do this right from the start, let's get it right from the start. Each of these submissions includes a community benefits plan that details how the hubs will engage with community and labor groups, create good paying jobs, advance diversity and equity and accessibility, and they all talk about how they will work to support our environmental justice goals. We have to do the hard work of scaling up the utilization of this clean fuel source in a way that instills confidence in our communities and listens to the folks who will be at the fence line of these production facilities. So we're excited about the hubs and their catalytic effect, and this is an early indicator of where we think things will go. Let me just sort of close out a little bit with where I think we can head in the coming couple of years. The president's talked a lot about this week what it takes to finish the job, right? What it takes to finish the job. So number one, I think in terms of finishing the job on the full opportunity set here is follow through on our shot, right? Every coach will tell you, once you release the ball, it's not when you're done. And so I think in terms of our focus on labor and our focus on environmental justice and our communities, we got to have follow through throughout in every single time we deploy. We've got to do it in a way that reinforces, builds track record and confidence. That's number one. And I think we've got to do, and I think the analysis today, and kudos to Alex in particular and the entire team that contributed to it. One of the big things is going to be harnessing knowledge sharing potential across the hubs and where build out is taking place, and making sure that knowledge sharing is happening seamlessly and quickly across that complex. Number two is we've got to continue to invest in innovation. We are not done. Clean hydrogen is not all the way there in terms of the full potential being ready to be harnessed across the economy. And that, there are obvious places where that innovation is going to happen. Making the sort of electrolyzer cheaper and easier to manufacture and then use is one. But I think there are going to be, again, as I noted at the beginning, there's going to have to be innovation that happens in the midstream and on the end use side as well for us to fully take advantage of this. The third is we've got to make sure that we're connecting the dots between hydrogen and all the clean hydrogen opportunity and all of the sectors where we could make a difference with this. So I think these sort of early days of hydrogen, we sort of looked at parts of the transportation sector, maybe parts of the industrial sector as the likely users. We've got to think about how this potentially helps us with the harder to decarbonize parts of the building sector. We got to look at the potential here to bring some increased flexibility to the power sector. I think part of it is just mapping out the potential, and then again doing the spade work on the demand side to facilitate fully leveraging the opportunity. I think that the president could not be more focused on achieving our clean energy goals, our climate goals, doing it in a way that strengthens American jobs, communities, our industrial capacity here in the country, not just to manufacture for ourselves, but for markets all around the world. I think we can do that with clean hydrogen in a way that has a virtuous cycle of boosting confidence, and we will do that if we are nimble, if we are transparent, and we are relentless. And I think dialogues like this one and the ideas laid out in the strategy today are helpful in moving us in the right direction.
Great. Well, thanks, Ali. And I have to say that you bringing up the phrase "finish the job," I think very much captures the spirit of our report, actually, that we have a fabulous foundation and now we got to finish the job. That's really, really true. Also, on the innovation side that you mentioned, just to say it in a slightly different way, we've always emphasized that innovation is about technology, but also about business models. It's also about policy, and all that innovation has to come together. If I may just ask you one brief question, because you mentioned the role of so many different departments in the administration, in particular with Treasury and the IRS. Can you just give us an idea? How do you see the kind of the timeline for all of the tax incentive rulemaking that has to go on, et cetera?
Yeah. So as I noted, I think there are a few different tax credits that will be relevant here. I think within the next month or so, and we actually have a statutory deadline, so I don't need to be opaque about this one. We'll see more detail on the Section 48C tax credit that will help folks think through how best to leverage that in the build out of the manufacturing capacity in support of producing clean hydrogen. That's number one. So sort of keep an eye out for that this month, essentially. The next is the hydrogen production tax credit. That'll be obviously a very significant piece of business. And I think that's a few months away. Treasury has been engaging with stakeholders on this, as has the interagency, including the Department of Energy, on how to do this in a way that builds transparency and boosts confidence in terms of netting reduced emissions in a significant way. We've got to net significant reductions in life cycle emissions, and for us to do that, we've got to have confidence across the value chain. So that's something that I think is more sort of a late spring, summertime step forward on that. And then I think what I haven't mentioned is the interplay between this and the sort of more traditional fuel side, but there is the sustainable aviation production credit in IRA as well. There will be additional Treasury action on that later in the year as well, and that'll be a place for folks to engage too, because I think some sustainable aviation fuels will be purely sort of bio-based. Others may leverage this form of technology. I think the other place, and this goes to a little bit of the sort of how do we connect the dots here, right? You noted my service in the state of New York. one of the things I got sort of obsessed with in New York, and I'm excited to see this transition actually taking place, is the re-leveraging of essentially retired fossil assets as hubs to convert excess renewable power into clean hydrogen fuel. We're starting to see, as the sort of offshore wind capacity starts to take off in the New York Bight region, old power plants potentially turn into places where there will be massive electrolyzer capacity, turn that into hydrogen, both as a source of fuel, but also as a way to store some of that excess capacity to do the sort of load balancing that will need to be done. So to that end, I think the energy communities adder that's included in the renewables production credit and investment tax credit is actually pretty relevant, because I think folks can locate near assets that will help us convert some of this clean electricity into cleaner fuels.
Great. Well, look, Ali, we could go on for a long time, but we appreciate your time. And I guess I would just add in your bio that you also had a gig at my graduate alma mater, Stanford, but we'll let that one go for now. Thank you. It's been terrific insight into how you're all thinking about this. And so, again, we'll just offer, of course, certainly from EFI, and I'm sure from others listening in here, all the support that we can provide. We'd be happy to do so.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your leadership on this. I mean, we've got to be, I think, relentless on the innovation front, whether it's materials fatigue or whatever else that we need to sort through. We've got to fully harness this technology and fuel potential for our climate and energy security goals. So grateful to be here with you.
Okay, thank you. And we're now going to go on to actually Alex to summarize what the report says. So thanks, Ali. We'll see you.
Thank you
Alex,
so much.
It's over to you.
Yep. I believe I'm unmuted and the slides are starting. Perfect. Good morning. My name is Alex Kizer. I'm the Senior Vice President for Research here at EFI, and I lead our work on U.S. hydrogen issues. I'm going to talk about some of the key insights and recommendations from this new report that we've been discussing, the U.S. Hydrogen Demand Action Plan. It is the product of 2 years of research, as the Secretary said, and actually nearly 200 interviews, 3 regional workshop convenings, and a lot of support from policy, industry, labor, and academic communities. Next slide. This is the agenda for the next 30 minutes or so. I'm going to walk through our study motivation, the approach, mention some of the key takeaways and recommendations. We're then going to show a very short video that walks through a new hydrogen market development tool that we built for this study that will be also found on the website. Then we're going to hear 2 outside perspectives to hear on what they see as what's next for clean hydrogen market development in this country. Next slide. Before I begin, I do want to thank the fantastic team behind this work. You can see many of them here. We relied also heavily on nearly 20 other contributors along the way, including our tremendous communications team that also helped put this event together. So thank you. Next slide. And I want to thank the project advisory group. While their participation does not imply endorsement of the report's conclusions, this group provided critical feedback, perspectives on technologies, policies and regulations, techno-economics, and many environmental and social issues that must be prioritized when considering clean hydrogen market formation strategies. Next slide. So this is the motivation. Reaching net zero emissions in less than 30 years depends on successfully reaching scale while navigating certain boundary conditions of the energy sector that make it historically slow to change. For example, energy is a highly capitalized commodity business with established supply chains and customer bases that need to provide critical services 24/7. And we think hydrogen is uniquely suited to navigate these boundary conditions. It can be produced and consumed in multiple sectors in most regions of the country, including by some of the most difficult to abate. It can build on our existing supply chains and customer bases, supporting essentially a dual track of decarbonization. decarbonize the existing system while building toward an entirely new infrastructure over the long term. And the last bullet, while we'll get into the economics, it must be appreciated that the United States is well positioned in hydrogen, as hydrogen requires energy resources for conversion, solar, wind, gas, nuclear, and industrial economy and labor force to build, operate, and innovate its expansion, and policy and private sector motivation and support. Next slide. So this is our approach, how we got to the demand action plan. As it was mentioned, it began in early 2020 when we were thinking about the growing what felt like hydrogen hype. There were rumblings of new federal policies, but nothing established. So we started by, in 2021, interviewing nearly 80 investors from across the industry, and we asked them two questions. What are you doing in hydrogen and why? As in, what is motivating your investment or non-investment? A major insight here was that many of these firms were making decisions based mostly on just how they can move quickly up the hydrogen learning curve, as opposed to finding long-term plays. Building on this, we convened workshops with over 100 regional stakeholders across 3 key regions. You can see them in the center there: Ohio River Valley, the Carolinas and surrounding regions, and the Gulf Coast. And each regional convening, we wanted to understand, what is it going to take to jumpstart clean hydrogen markets? Is that more policy, certain regulations? What's it going to take? We'll talk about some of those conclusions in a moment. A common thread throughout all this work was concerns over how to activate the demand side, specifically finding bankable off-takers for new clean hydrogen supplies, and this motivated the action plan. You can see the 3 components of the action plan there. One is a review of the current clean hydrogen industry. Another is techno-economic analysis of the impacts of the IRA, and finally, recommendations and strategies for implementation aimed at supporting domestic markets. Next slide. This is sort of the bottom line up front, as I would call it, or the 4 key takeaways. First, since the IIJA, there has been an enormous growth in interest in clean hydrogen from the private sector, and we've tracked 374 new clean hydrogen project announcements between June 2021 and August 2022. Reviewing these makes it clear that these are mostly small-scale pilots focused on that point I made earlier, how to quickly move up the learning curve. And the projects with explicit off-takers often de-risk by offering other products in addition to hydrogen that already have existing customers like ammonia or carbon black. Second, the IRA will significantly lower the cost of clean hydrogen production in this country. While IRA and IIJA build a strong foundation, more actions are needed for demand creation. On the right, you can see a roll-up of cost numbers, which the next slide will go into greater detail, factoring in an array of pathways. But you can see on the left kind of the average clean hydrogen cost today. And then on the right, the gold wedge, you can see the cost declines thanks to IRA. And in some cases, you can see those costs reach as low as $0 a kilogram for clean hydrogen. An extensive study of industrial sectors, which you can see is the orange sliver, show that the cost ranges needed for these industries to switch to clean hydrogen need to be in the 27 cents to 90 cents a kilogram range. Thus, we may be seeing a small gap between the supply side incentives of the IRA and industrial demand. And this brings us to number 3. Designing strategies to bridge this gap is a major focus of our action plan. IRA implementation should be flexible with phased approaches for projects to reach technical compliance. This does not mean compromising the policy objectives of producing hydrogen with very low life cycle emissions. Rather, it is creating a glide path for compliance for first movers that are navigating many market development challenges. Finally, regional clean hydrogen hubs are one of the most important opportunities for de-risking many of these issues, as they are one of the only major federal policy programs that really targets demand. So of course, how to maximize the utility of these hubs and expand them is a major focus of our report. Next slide. We won't dig into each one of these categories, and I'm going to be spending some time on a few of these cost breakdowns in a moment, but you can see that we did a range of scenarios using real world data to understand the cost decline impacts of IRA. On the left-hand side are those pre-IRA costs based on the specific details and parameters that we've provided here. And then on the right is the after IRA costs. So the declines factoring in this valuable policy incentives. And so you can see a lot of major cost declines as a result. Next slide. So in order to bridge that possible cost gap that we identified after the supply side incentives of the IRA, we recommend additional policies and what we call industrial strategies to guide implementation. You can see the action plan framework here. I'm going to be walking through the specific areas around the wheel, starting with the wedge at the bottom, deploy regional hubs as engines for market formation. Next slide. We think regional hubs can stimulate this market demand by de-risking investments and allowing participants to pool resources, jointly manage costs, and coordinate infrastructure development. You can see 3 specific recommendations. I'm only going to go into greater detail on one, but we think hubs should really promote robust information sharing for all hubs so that they can share lessons learned between each and to inform the next wave of interested projects. We also recommend that as part of the governance structures of each hub, there are clear rules for new entrants related to socializing costs, emissions accounting, and regulations. This is going to be really important as we try to expand this market. Finally, one of our main points, we recommend that Congress significantly increase the funding for DOE's H2 Hubs program for additional hydrogen clusters throughout the country, focusing on projects that enable regional network expansion. Mr. Zaidi talked a lot about the value of infrastructure, and this is in part what we're talking about. We see this as a critical step for hydrogen market development. Next slide. DOE, I think, rightly envisions 6 to 10 regional hubs based on the funding that they have. But as you can see here, we've tracked nearly 400 announced clean hydrogen projects since the IIJA was passed, representing roughly 2.2 million metric tons of potential clean hydrogen supply across many regions of the country. Based on these announcements and other work that we're going to show, we feel like there's a significant appetite for regional hubs beyond this first wave. And while IRA will play a major role in bringing some of these online, many of the first mover challenges will remain, especially related to network expansion. Next slide. Here's our next set of recommendations. This really drills down into this early mover point that I've been making. We recommend that the federal government explore its own opportunities for procurement of clean hydrogen as part of its own strategy to decarbonize. We also recommend that the business plan for each regional hub consider taking on new investments while clearly defining how the new IRA incentives are supporting the entire hydrogen value chain. And finally, as we discussed earlier, as the IRS and Treasury work on the guidance for the IRA's clean hydrogen production tax credit, we recommend taking a pragmatic, phased approach that ensures the development of clean hydrogen production while also ensuring that early mover projects receive the support they need to reach compliance. This should include covering issues of additionality that are being discussed widely today. For example, the IRS could initially require annual estimates of life cycle emissions, allowing producers some flexibility to provide multiple energy input types and possibly offsets, while setting expectations that this will phase over time to more stringent standards that might be daily or hourly life cycle emissions accounting. Next slide. While we recommend the IRS should take a technology neutral approach to illustrate the value of phasing the compliance requirements, here we focus on the impacts to blue hydrogen projects. Here are 4 scenarios: a gray hydrogen project before and after IRA. These are the same numbers that I showed you earlier. And you can see the life cycle emissions in the red dot there. And 3 cost scenarios of blue hydrogen projects and their life cycle emissions before and after IRA tax credits. The first project, Blue One, as called Blue One here, has an LCA of over 4 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of hydrogen, making it ineligible for 45V, but still able to capture the 45Q credit for geologic sequestration. And we estimate final hydrogen production costs that leveraging 45Q to be around $1.70 a kilogram. And we think this is the most common scenario for blue hydrogen projects due to the average US upstream emissions, which are around 3 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of hydrogen, and difficult to address as they are outside of the project's fence line. In the next scenario, we imagine a more flexible phased approach to IRA implementation, allowing the Blue 2 hydrogen producer to capture part of the 45V tax credit and work with its upstream gas and electricity providers to lower their system emissions. It is assumed this would be done at a cost to the Blue 2 project, still resulting in significantly lower clean hydrogen costs, around $1.40 a kilogram. Finally, we do a scenario with even greater upstream controls at a higher cost, still resulting in lower delivered cost of hydrogen. Next slide. Creating more coordinated and transparent permitting processes is a priority for the entire clean energy space. And we think that there are actions that can be taken to improve these processes for clean hydrogen. We recommend that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission begin the process of regulating the blending of hydrogen into interstate natural gas pipelines, aligning their existing authorities with important next steps for hydrogen projects. We also recommend that the administration work with Congress to develop a public-private partnership model for CO2 storage management. And the bottom line here, and this is pulled from another report that EFI just issued called CO2 Secure, it's on our website. The bottom line is that by de-risking CO2 storage, it could easily enable multiple forms of decarbonization, including hydrogen, direct air capture, and other forms of carbon dioxide removal. And finally, we recommend that each regional hub encourage strong coordination on permitting, especially for capturing the full benefits of the IRA across the clean hydrogen value chain. Next slide. We'll show you that here in a notional clean hydrogen hub and its value chain mapped to the various IRA incentive opportunities beyond 45V and 45Q. We think that it may be difficult for an individual firm to capture all these credits, so opportunities to pool resources and build out these systems together, employing the IRA credits as intended, should be explored. Creating a government coordinator, for example, could help to pair up projects, understand the dynamics of credits across the project's components, and could recommend strategies for maximizing that project development. Next slide. According to our reviews, there are now clean hydrogen strategies being developed across 40 countries, representing 65 million metric tons of new clean hydrogen supplies, compared to the 90 million tons of global hydrogen industry today, mostly gray hydrogen. Continuing to boost our US RD&D capabilities, which have grown significantly in recent years under the Biden administration, is important for supporting the commercialization incentives of the IRA. We need to continue to feed the hydrogen technology development and deployment system. We recommend new cross-functional centers of innovation that should focus on hydrogen among other industrial decarbonization issues. We also find that each regional hydrogen hub should deliberately manage technology turnover so that lessons learned from other hubs or within the hub can be reapplied within the scope of that activity. And finally, we recommend that DOE develop new collaborations with international partners, many of which are already working on clean hydrogen and hubs, to share lessons learned on key performance issues, including how to engage community partners and their impacts and life cycle emissions accounting standards. Next slide. The left side of the slide shows the history of DOE's hydrogen program from an energy R&D support mapped against the total DOE energy R&D. And so you can see it remains a small share and has since on here we plotted to 2000 part of that research portfolio. Compare this to renewable energy, which has accounted for nearly 20% of DOE's energy R&D funding since DOE's inception. On the right, you can see a comparison of the carbon accounting approaches for determining what is clean hydrogen for a select number of countries. You can see the US policy in red and how it takes its own approach for a select, and you can see a lot of variation between countries and how they define and scope their definitions for clean hydrogen. International exchanges and partnerships can help to create clearer standards and improve market certainty. Next slide. The transition to net zero emissions will depend on an unprecedented transition of the US workforce and strong alignment of projects with frontline and environmental justice communities. Because each community has its own needs, we focus our recommendations on ways to cut across most, if not all, regions and community groups. We recommend that regional clean hydrogen hubs prioritize local environmental safety and project selection and performance criteria. And while DOE is focused on this, Already, it is important that regional hubs explicitly dedicate resources to align safety requirements with frontline community needs, since they are the most impacted groups from safety and performance failures. This set-aside funding should include monitoring and intervention programs. We also recommend that frontline, EJ, and labor community groups are included early and often in the project, and that under-resourced groups are supported so they are able to stay engaged. And finally, we recommend that each hydrogen hub should establish a goal of improving the overall quality of life for communities, and including driving positive economic change, increasing energy resilience, and lowering energy costs. Next slide. I'm going to show you a video in a moment that explains these figures in greater detail, but it's helpful to show a comparison of how, and the bottom line is here is that we need to take a comprehensive look at community impacts of clean hydrogen. And here's two ways to start thinking about that. On the left, you can see the Cleveland, Ohio metro area and the distribution of climate and economic justice indicators in gray. The blue, green, and purple dots show that there are potential hydrogen market development capabilities in the region. And this sort of crosswalk can help us to navigate project development by identifying concerns of some communities and ways to potentially avoid past mistakes. On the right, you can see community impacts in other ways. You can see hydrogen market development potential of the Ohio River Valley and how it compares to fossil jobs in yellow that we believe are currently at risk during the clean transition that could be repurposed to support hydrogen. And there's significant overlap there. If we jump over to the video, please. Before I conclude, we want to show you this tool that we built called the Hydrogen Transition Framework, or HYTF, and give you all a break from hearing from me. Our team created this great video that explains HYTF, how it will be used, how it was used in our study, and how it may be useful to you all, to policymakers and industry groups, among others, moving forward. Thank you.
Welcome to this overview of the Energy Futures Initiative Hydrogen Transition Framework, or HYTF for short. HYTF is a new analytical framework and dynamic database that includes relevant energy, economic, and policy information that could inform hydrogen project development, regional hydrogen hubs, and broader market formation. This tool was instrumental in informing the analysis and recommendations of our new report, an action plan for U.S. hydrogen market formation. The mapping tool, which will be publicly available on EFI's website, will display information relevant to the U.S. clean hydrogen value chain. Attributes can range from hydrogen-specific technologies such as hydrogen production to hydrogen-adjacent elements like university research and development budgets. HYTF opens on a map display with a legend at the bottom, a search bar in the top right, and an explainer button in the far left-hand corner. If we open the explainer, the box provides general information about how the tool is set up. It explains what the legend means, as well as relevant details for exploring the data tool. In some cases, data may be described in ways that are highly qualitative, like the instance shown here, and need further explanation. That explanation can be found under the Tool Details button. Once you are familiar with the tool details, head on over to the legend. Next to each category, an informational hover option is available for more specific descriptions of what each category means. Next, start exploring the data. Click on the buttons, which will light up with information in the hexagonal bins on the map. Every hex bin that lights up on the map is full of data specific to that area. No matter what you are interested in, HYTF wants to provide easy data access across all elements. Therefore, under each pop-up, HYTF offers data downloads that offer easy access to the underlying data that HYTF is built on. The data is simple to read and can be used according to a user's needs. For the purpose of the demonstration, we will zoom in on 3 areas in particular: the Gulf Coast of Texas and Louisiana, the Ohio River Valley, and the Carolinas. All of these regions were evaluated for clean hydrogen potential by EFI in the last 2 years. In reality, hubs can form at larger or smaller scales. There is no strict definition by the Department of Energy, and these certainly are not the only areas that have seen and will continue to see the eruption of hydrogen-related activity popping up. First, let's examine the Gulf, which looks great when we turn on the demand hex bins. In fact, 20% of the demand hex bins classified in HITIF as excellent are here in the Gulf. But why? Upon closer examination, it becomes plenty clear. Look at all of the hydrogen and petrochemical activity in the region. Not only are most of the 1,600 miles of the country's hydrogen pipeline in the region, but the Gulf is also comprised of nearly half of hydrogen production today, and a massive logistics infrastructure too, including 6 major ports. As our study concludes, near-term demand for clean hydrogen will largely come from existing industries, like refineries, ammonia plants, and methanol plants. The Ohio River Valley is another fossil-dependent region that envisions clean hydrogen as a transitional fuel for its broader economic and sustainability goals. The region is a massive producer of steel, in which hydrogen can have a large role when it comes to direct reduction of iron. These plants make up 22% of all steel production in the country. HITIF also identifies a lot of interests and capabilities in the region related to hydrogen, an important example of social capital that is often forgotten when looking at the viability of a region to build a clean hydrogen market. 3 R1 universities, all with major energy institutions, can offer viable testbeds for innovation, a national laboratory, incoming federal dollars, patents, and innovation awards for hydrogen. All are important building blocks for bringing a market together. Clean hydrogen hubs may even pop up in regions where there is a limited hydrogen industry, but robust hydrogen-ready capabilities. The Carolinas, for example, have just a few hydrogen projects in the works, but are well suited to turn into a hydrogen powerhouse, with a fair share of logistics infrastructure, renewables potential, and nuclear plants. These pair well with a litany of useful capabilities, including 5 of their own R1 universities, a national lab, and all sorts of hydrogen innovation capabilities in the forms of patents, grants, loans, and interested companies. It is EFI's hope that whether you are a project developer, stakeholder, or even a funder, this collection of data in a simple-to-use mapping display will support endeavors related to hydrogen market formation, giving people the information they need to make decisions about how hydrogen might create new opportunities, and the way they should go about unlocking those opportunities too.
Thank you so much. This tool will be available on our website, and look out for more projects we're developing that build on this capability. Back to my slides, I'm going to do one quick summary conclusion slide, and then we're going to hear from a few of our panelists. Well, I think I'd conclude by saying we believe and we see unprecedented momentum for clean hydrogen in the United States. This includes policy support, private sector investments, and general interest in hydrogen. The IRA and IIJA build a strong foundation, and we find in the Hydrogen Demand Action Plan that doubling down on regional hubs and making sure that implementation of both policies takes a flexible approach that supports first mover projects will be critical for creating demand. We are now going to hear from 2 stakeholders who will share their thoughts on the critical next steps for clean hydrogen before we conclude. And it's my pleasure to introduce Janice Lin, founder and CEO of Strategen, a mission-driven nonprofit that is championing the role of green hydrogen, working across the hydrogen ecosystem, communities, regulators, and industry to achieve a clean and just energy transition economy-wide. Then we'll hear from Brad Markell, Executive Director of the Industrial Council at the AFL-CIO. Brad will share with us some of the labor perspectives on clean hydrogen and what Brad and those in labor see as the key next steps for building out these new markets. Janice?
Thanks, Alex. Thank you for inviting me to join you today. And I want to commend you and the EFI team for an amazing study and report. So just a quick clarification, I am the founder and CEO of Strategen. I'm also the founder and president of the Green Hydrogen Coalition. We've been architecting regional green hydrogen hub system plans now for more than 3 years in California and more recently in the Carolinas through our High Build North America platform. You know, what we've learned is that this green hydrogen economy is doable at low cost, mass scale, and consistent with your findings. Enabling demand is key. And enabling that demand requires assured supply of low cost, delivered green and clean hydrogen. And that goal requires shared infrastructure, namely pipeline transport with interconnected access to geologic storage and salt domes. This shared infrastructure is absolutely the key driver for our ability to achieve low delivery costs and assured supply to enable accelerated offtake. And, you know, to your question of what's next and how can we work together, one, totally support all this hub activity. And I think the very next step is for us to think together of how we can integrate these hubs and especially to minimize some of the regulatory uncertainty. And I think you mentioned it earlier that we do have some jurisdictional ambiguity on which jurisdiction has authority over interstate 100% and hydrogen and blended hydrogen pipelines carrying hydrogen as for all these applications, these energy applications we're talking about. We have to start now. We have to reduce that regulatory uncertainty. And related to that idea, there's a tremendous amount of regulatory innovation that's needed right away to start silo busting and how all of us think about planning our infrastructure across silos, electric, gas, transportation, water, waste infrastructure. Right now, those processes are quite siloed. And as we all know, clean and green hydrogen touches everything. And so there's an opportunity as we roll out the needed infrastructure to do this in a more coordinated and logical way. And then the final thing I'll say to wrap up is, and you touched on this, is that as we think about building out this infrastructure, it represents an unprecedented opportunity to reinvent how we move forward, to do this in partnership with frontline communities and the important stakeholders who maybe historically have not been so included. This is going to require investment in these communities themselves so they can build capacity and have the bandwidth and resources to meaningfully participate. This is an opportunity to innovate in how we plan our energy ecosystem and figure out these answers together. But, you know, we all need to have those resources to show up and be at the table. I'll wrap up my comments there, and I'm eager to hear from Brad.
Thanks, Janice. Brad, what do you think? What's next?
By thanking EFI, our long-term partners, for this great piece of work. It's always important to start with as much data and as much clean analysis as you can, transparent analysis. So this is a really important piece of work. You know, next for us are a lot of things flowing. I think we're not, you know, we see a lot of activity coming from project developers that sort of indicates, hey, not quite that pessimistic, I think would be the gut feel. So it's a little bit of a cold water situation, maybe in some sense, but you know, just look at the power side, for example, right? You've got Mitsubishi and Siemens and GE all out there with turbines, and probably not just for the heck of it. There are, you know, I really appreciate the spirit of the paper in that we're off to a decent start, but we haven't done what we need to do yet to really get there. And from our point of view, you know, this is a huge just transition proposition, right? The people that are working in the pipe trades and in other places see themselves in future, right? In the power sector, in heavy industry. So getting the jobs piece of it right, the job quality piece of it right, the community benefit agreements as they're being scored at DOE could probably use an upgrade, not just DOE's R&D. So that's on our plate. Really, the 45V guidance, I think, is going to be key. And I think there's a lot of pushing and pulling, and it will be a mistake if Treasury does a full life cycle analysis based on, having to have all clean electrons or something like that. It's just gonna, take the punch bowl away as the party's just getting started. We're really hot to trot on some of the Class 6 wells getting licensed and try to unblock the glitches there. And state primacy is an answer in some areas. I think for us trying to understand and really work it with these projects, because we're going to have X number of hydrogen projects. The hubs are oversubscribed, so the call for more money is spot on. And this is a lot of investment, and like you're only going to swing hundreds of billions in investment based on 8 billion in government money so far, right? And lastly, I will just say the shared infrastructure, and really where is that market going to develop so that the producers and the users can join up through shared infrastructure. And I think we have to be very careful about the social license. And one piece in here that I think I wanted to hear a little bit more on is how are we talking about criteria pollutants? How are we talking about NOx? And then if you think about like tighter regulations on criteria pollutants from industrial sources, that probably twists this calculation a little bit too, but we don't know what those are. But the bottom line is we see a lot of potential here, and we can't have like a big IRA policy push and then think we're done, because I don't think that's how industries develop or how this is going to work. But really, thanks for all this information. We're still digesting it, and the tool looks fantastic.
Thanks, Brad and Janice. And I think something that we'd all agree on, and I'll turn it back to you guys for one moment before having Secretary Moniz wrap up, is this role of infrastructure and the timing and sequencing of a lot of this build out. And there's a lot of questions about how the policies will be needed to ensure the infrastructure gets built. And we're in the middle of figuring out the details of a lot of these policies. And so just maybe if both of you touch on for a moment in your respective experiences, how do you see this infrastructure build out? What role do you see it playing in this broader theme of enabling demand or broader market formation? And I'll just start with Janice again, and then jump to Brad.
Yeah, well, thanks, Alex. As I mentioned earlier, this infrastructure is absolutely key, right? I mean, we have infrastructure for our current energy industry, and what we're talking about here for clean and green hydrogen is building out quite a lot of new infrastructure across sectors. And it's so critical because it's the balancing, it's the mass scale transport, storage, and delivery of the clean and green hydrogen, which is the cost barrier today. We know we can produce it at scale and at very low cost. I think there's very low risk to that, but it's getting it to the point of consumption that's extremely expensive today, and as it would be, in any industry. So this is the shared infrastructure that we need to build and start focusing on now, and this infrastructure ultimately needs to span regions and crisscross the entire United States. So the quicker we can build it, the quicker we can produce really big production facilities and get those, clean and green molecules to mass scale end users when and where they need it and in the quantities they need. We know infrastructure building is hard, and this is a hard problem because it spans so many sectors. And that's why we're really focused on how do we work together across industry, environmental groups, policymakers, frontline communities, and that saying, like sometimes to go far, you need to slow down a little bit, and sometimes to go far and go fast, you need to go together. And I would just offer that to go fastest, we need to go together in alignment. And so a little focus now on how we can do that and set the stage so that productive, constructive collaboration can happen, I think would be well worth the investment.
Well said. Brad?
Well, I mean, Janice calling for collaboration, that's always the order of the day, but you guys touch on permitting reform. I think that's something I would highlight, right? Like if we don't get permitting reform, if we can't permit projects faster, we're in hydrogen or any other technology, we're not going to meet our clean energy goals, and we're not going to beat the climate crisis as quickly as we should. I think this report starts to lay out what are the conditions for increasing demand, right? And you want to have, like, you think about connected shared infrastructure, as Janice said, I think we'll get there on the production side. The question is, who's going to be where's the demand? Because if I want to connect production with shared infrastructure to demand, I kind of have to know where that demand is. And I do think the innovation side, what's going to happen, in steel mills and other places like that, we'll start to put those pins on the map, on the mapping tool, perhaps, for where the demand is. And that I think will drive the shared infrastructure piece.
That's great. And thank you both so much for kind of capping us off here. Wanted to hear from outside perspectives on these key issues. And I think it gets to the point of working together and collaboration. And so really appreciate your time. I'm going to turn it over to Secretary Moniz to offer some final thoughts, and then I'll let everybody get back to their day. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Alex. And given the time, I will try to be brief. And thanks to Brad and Janice, of course, as well. And of course, early on in the program, thanks to Ali Zaidi for giving us his time with the administration perspective. I do want to, again, make sure to emphasize thanks to not only Alex, but the entire team that's been working on this series of hydrogen activities now for, well over 2 years. And this event today makes it clear we're still kind of pretty early in the discussion. But a few points. Well, I guess Alex has really emphasized, and the report emphasizes, that we have come a long way in a short time. But again, that cannot lead to complacency, because we have a long way to go. I would congratulate the team for putting together this report and this discussion, where we've actually managed to go through an hour plus of discussion of hydrogen without a huge focus on colors of the rainbow. And I think that's some progress in and of itself. Ali emphasized this finish the job aspect, very much, again, aligned with the message of our report. He also emphasized, as we heard just now from Janice and Brad, the importance of coupling all of this transformation to a hydrogen economy in the context of the economy, of social justice, of jobs. Manufacturing has been mentioned. I would just mention that EFI published last month an economic analysis, the initiative starting with our partners in labor, an economic analysis of the IRA impacts. And just to note that the impacts in terms of employment, in terms of jobs, were particularly strong, actually, in 3 areas: manufacturing, construction, and the electricity sector, all of which, of course, will be in one way or another touched by this hydrogen initiative. Going to our stakeholders, Janice and Brad, again, thanks for your perspectives. I'm not going to repeat all that you've said, but I would say that number one, it resonates with the characteristics that we have always emphasized as being very important for any successful approach at decarbonization. We need to build coalitions, and I would say the discussions today have been very encouraging, that those coalitions to advance hydrogen are there to be built. Secondly, that solutions will be highly regional in nature, And that was emphasized with when Ali mentioned the 79 pre-proposals, if you like, to DOE for the hubs and how it spanned all regions. And we know the hubs, those hubs discussions emphasizing all kinds of different ways of developing the demand side market. And then third, I would add the importance of optionality. And with hydrogen, especially having, well, so many flavors of the supply side, but then the need for this well thought through and implemented and permitted infrastructure and the multiple sectors to be served. This question of as much optionality as we can build in the system, I think will be very important. Look, there's much more to say, but we have run a bit over, for which we apologize, but I think the discussion has been very, very rich. We would welcome, of course, further comments on the report, which will be, if not already, shortly posted, the full report. And let's work together, as has been emphasized by Janice and Lynn and Alex, Janice and Brad and Alex in this discussion. So with that, I guess I will call this to a close and look forward to further working on getting these hydrogen markets developed as rapidly and as sensibly as we can. Thank you all.